Hi, Year 7, and welcome to your first lesson on the Shakespeare monologue from this play, King Lear. The way this lesson is going to work is you've hit play on this YouTube video now, but you've also got a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm going to be sort of talking you through as you click through the presentation. There will be moments throughout the presentation that I'll be asking you to stop, pause this video and spend a couple of minutes doing a bit of writing. You're going to write some things down in your exercise books, do that writing then, and then just hit play again and the video will start back up again and we will talk through the next bit. So let's talk about King Lear. It's a very famous Shakespeare play. You may have heard of this one before already. Very interesting play, King Lear. It was written and first performed in 1606. And something very interesting was happening in London in 1606. There was an outbreak of the bubonic plague, and because of this, the government actually banned large crowds gathering in public places. That meant that all of the theatres were closed down and everybody had to stay in their houses and not go and mingle in big groups. So this sounds somewhat familiar to us, I think you'll agree. So Shakespeare actually wrote this play. It is believed, lots of people believe that he wrote this play while he was kind of in a bit of a lockdown situation. He was sat at home and he was writing this by himself and he had to wait for the theatres to open back up at the end of the year before this play got performed. So you're looking at your PowerPoint presentation right now, and it's telling us on slide 1 that the objectives for this lesson will be to analyse Shakespeare's use of language and structure in a monologue. Now, if you can't remember, if you've forgotten from the lessons before about monologues are sections of Shakespearean speech in a Shakespeare play where one character is speaking by themselves in an extended fashion. So we've already looked at the Macbeth speech, for example. I'm going to give you, just like with Macbeth, a little bit of the background on the story of King Lear so far so that we can understand what's going on in this character's mind when they get to this part of the play. It's a very famous and well-known speech, but it's important that we understand who King Lear is and what's going through his head. Otherwise, some of the things that he says and does, they won't make any sense at all. So the story so far on slide 2, King Lear, well, you can tell that he's a king. He is an old man. He is very powerful. He is very rich. He's the king of Britain, but this is taking place way back in history, even for Shakespeare in 1606. This is way back in the kind of dark ages. He lives in this great big castle. He's very old and decrepit, and he's basically had enough of being king. Too much hard work, too much responsibility. He's old, he just wants to retire, basically. So he decides he's going to retire and he's going to step aside, and he decides that he's going to divide his kingdom up between his 3 daughters. His 3 daughters are called Goneril, Regan and Cordelia. So how's he going to split his kingdom up between his 3 daughters? Well, move on to slide 3. He tells his daughters he will divide the kingdom between them based upon which one of them loves him most. Now, already I want you to think about what kind of character this is who's bringing his 3 daughters together. And actually this scene is taking place in front of the whole royal court. There's lots of people there, and he's going to ask them to stand up and give a speech to explain how much they love him. And he's going to make his assessment about what part of the country, what castles, what areas of land he's going to give to them based on how much they love him. But he has a secret, which is that of his 3 daughters, he actually has a favourite, and it's the daughter called Cordelia, and he's leaving her till the end because actually deep down he already knows that she is his favourite daughter, right? So they all stand up and they give these speeches. The first 2, Goneril and Regan, they stand up and they give these speeches where they basically say, a wonderful man, a brilliant father, beautiful person, we will love and honour and respect you, blah, 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 blah. And for each of them he says, yeah, wonderful, you can have a third of the kingdom. And the next one, you can have a third of the kingdom. And then it comes to Cordelia, his favourite, and she stands up and she says nothing. Nothing? Nothing. I love you just as much as a daughter should. Love her father. No more, no less. That's it. End of speech. I love you as much as a daughter should love her father. Okay. Now, how do you think a father should react to this? How do you think somebody should react to the idea that they're being loved just as much as a daughter should love their father? Well, King Lear reacts with absolute fury, absolute downright anger. He gets extremely cross. He starts throwing his toys out of the pram. He gets extremely upset, shouts at her, So there's a pause point which is coming up here, and you can see on slide 4 that there are a couple of questions that you're just going to take 2 minutes, that's all, 2 minutes max. Pause the video, 2 minutes max to answer the 3 questions which are in the yellow box on slide 4. Do that now, please. And we're back. You've just done that, and make sure if you didn't do that just then that you do stop the video and you write this stuff down, because it's got to be in your exercise book. Do you think that King Lear is right to be angry? What do you think he wanted to hear, and what sort of character do you think this makes him? Well, I'm imagining that you probably thought that this was a bit of an unfair way to react, because actually what Cordelia is saying in terms of loving him as much as a daughter should love her father, that actually that's meant in a way which is supposed to be quite nice and quite positive. What she's done is not chosen to really, go over the top with all of this big language, and she just said, "No, I love you, Dad, that's it." But he's got really angry at this. So one way of interpreting this, the way I do, is I think that's quite unfair for him to react like that. So what sort of character does this make him? Well, you may have written down some words here. I think that you might think about him as a kind of self-centered character, in the sense that he just sees this from his point of view and not from hers. Maybe quite a vain character in terms of the fact that what he wants to hear is lots of lovely stuff about himself, and he hasn't really listened to what Cordelia's tried to say. And also a character who is quick to anger, very angry, full of fury and rage, as an old man, but he doesn't really need to be here. It doesn't make much sense. He gets so angry, and we're moving on to the next slide here. He gets so angry that he casts Cordelia out of his castle, full stop. She is banished. She is disowned by him. This is the worst thing that he can do to a royal, princess, basically. She's no longer a member of the royal family. She just has to go off into the wilderness, right? Gives her no land. He goes back to the first 2 daughters. He says, right, forget a third each. You can have half each, half for you, half for Goneril, half for Regan. And then he retires. He keeps 100 guards for himself. He keeps a servant, and he keeps his fool, which is the name for the guy whose job it is to, dressed up like a jester